Good morning, brothers and sisters, distinguished guests, friends, and most importantly, the family of Brother Joe Killian. My name is Ryan Reese, President of the Vancouver Firefighters Union. Like many of you, I wasn't expecting to be standing in this beautiful church today speaking about Joe. However, we are very grateful for your support for our brother by being here today. On January 7th, I spoke to Jim Harrington, known by most as 5 for 5. A question came up regarding contract language that we had negotiated, and I needed him to walk me down memory lane. Like many of our conversations over the last few months, it ended with me asking about how Joe was doing. 5 for 5 mentioned his platelet numbers were down, and he had recently received an infusion. After 30 minutes of 5 for 5 explaining the platelet donation process, and me thinking the 5 for 5 represented the American Red Cross, we developed a plan to help our brother in need. Little did we know the plan would never go into effect. As I traveled to Florida for meetings the next day, I received the mournful text that our brother had died less than 24 hours later. As I looked into the blue skyline at 30,000 feet trying to make sense of what I had learned, all I could hear was Joe's voice saying, "I'm so sorry, Ryan." Knowing Joe, he wasn't sorry for what had happened. He was sorry for the impact it would put on everyone else. When Joe retired in 2017, we did everything we could to get him to come to our annual award ceremony for the local. No matter the day that was selected, it always conflicted with something. A clam tide, a birthday party, or maybe just a happy hour. Any possible excuse he could use not to be recognized. So Joe, today, I'm sorry for you, because we finally get to say everything we wanted to share about you, and we're never given the opportunity. Joe served Local 1805 as a shop steward for several years. It wasn't easy getting Joe to accept a leadership position. Joe was the kind of guy who gave 100% on shift, but when it came to 0800 the following day, it was time to go home. Joe loved his job, but he also loved his time off as well. When we asked him to run for a shop steward position, he was hesitant. Joe did not like being around conflict. He was very unassuming and did not present himself in a confrontational manner. He preferred to discuss things in a calm and rational way. But that did not mean that he was not willing to be firm in his beliefs when the need presented itself. More often than not, when there was a spirited discussion in an executive board meeting, he would stand back and wait for everyone to have their say, and then come in at the end and tell us that we should probably do it this way, just so that we could move the conversation along. As a shop steward, Joe used that position to educate our membership. When someone would come in with a possible grievance, Joe made them research the article they felt was violated as a way for them to learn about the issue and their contract. Once the education session was done, it usually was a misunderstanding, but if the manner warranted, Joe would back them all the way. In negotiations, Joe at times was the voice of reason. When we were looking at proposals with either disbelief or skepticism, Joe would quietly study the proposal and would ask, "What's wrong with it?" Which would usually lead to a discussion that more times than not, we would ask ourselves that same question. Joe rarely looked at the other side of the table as the adversary, but more as a group we needed to work with collaboratively. Joe took the time to educate himself on labor relations, negotiations, and what it meant to be a shop steward and a local officer. Joe had a lot of close friends and a few very special family members involved in labor, including Brother Wilcox and Brother Grizzle from the ILWU, the Longshoremen. Joe was always building his labor foundation. In one of my favorite stories of Joe as a shop steward, I remember we were preparing for arbitration. As 5 for 5, Joe and I sat at Billy Blues solving the world's problems. I remember talking about the expectations I had for their dress attire at the hearing. A few minutes later, we were on the road heading for the men's warehouse. As we arrived, we went our separate ways. And if you can imagine, 5 for 5 and Joe and I all walking into the men's warehouse, I mean, it was a sight to see. Joe quickly summoned me over to the rack containing a bunch of leather jackets. He said, "What do you think of this jacket?" I said, "I like it." Joe said, "Try it on. Let's see how it looks." Confused, I tried it on, and he looked it over. Joe then said, "Man, that jacket looks nice. I like it. I'm going to buy it." I told Joe I didn't need a jacket. His response, "It's not for you. It's for me, dummy." Completely perplexed that Joe was buying a jacket he had never tried on, 5 for 5 looked at me and said, "Don't even ask." Joe was proud to be a member of IAFF Local 1805, and he did not take that membership lightly. It was more than a sticker on his window or a logo on a shirt. It was a way of life, and he always took time to remember those that came before, providing for what we had. Joe is a big part of what we have today and what our members will take forward into the future. In closing, this job is impacting all of us. Brothers and sisters, cancer is not prejudiced in its attack. It's not just looking for the young or the old, the recruit or the senior firefighter. Some of you in the room today are in remission, and some of you are actively fighting. There are seats next to us that remain empty from those members taken too soon. The fact is, we need to do a better job of protecting each other. When Joe retired in 2017, he never thought he would spend his retirement years fighting for his life. So, sisters and brothers, I ask you today, if you aren't willing to do it for you, do it for Joe. Please do it for your family, because I know they would rather celebrate your retirement years with you rather than celebrate your life this way. Thank you again for this honor to speak on behalf of my brother, Joe Killian.